I'll preface this by saying I've never been a big believer in the paranormal, but this experience definitely changed my skepticism. Between 2016 and 2018, I was a supervisor in a warehouse. Over that period of time, but more towards the end of my time there, three separate things happened that I found spooky. The reason being, all three were confirmed by other staff members or contractors with no knowledge of the events happening to me too. It's also important to know my company had two units, one at either end of the building, and there was another company who owned the larger middle unit. The first thing that happened was seemingly insignificant, but turned out to be pretty creepy. While walking down the aisles, picking orders, I'd sometimes hear whistling, the sort of whistling you'd make when you were hiding from somebody and wanted to taunt them. The first couple of times it happened, I'd look for the source, with a smile on my face, thinking it was one of my colleagues playing with me. There weren't many places one could hide, mind you. There were 5 aisles that ran the full length of the warehouse, and they were narrow. Only one aisle dissected the 5 long aisles down the middle, and you could see between the shelves and through most of the racking. Even so, I could never find the source, and after that, I just shrugged it off as I couldn't be bothered playing along. Weeks later, one of my colleagues who worked in the other unit told me he used to get freaked out down there because he'd always hear whistling when he was on his own. There were only 2 people working in that unit, the vast majority of the time, and he said that he heard the whistling coming from the inside the warehouse when the other guy was outside having a cigarette, so it couldn't be him. He even mimicked the whistling, and it was the exact same one I used to hear. The second thing that was probably more eerie, I once heard my name being called by a bodiless voice. I was working in the packing area. I was the only person there, and I heard, faintly at first, my name. I thought maybe it was the radio, and it just sounded like somebody calling my name. Then, I heard it again, this time more clearly. So I walked to the end of the packing area, where it opened up to the warehouse. Not a soul was there. I even went up to the little canteen area, where one colleague was sitting, and I asked him if he was shouting my name, and he denied, and it wouldn't have sounded so loud if he was doing it from the other side of the wall. Then, I heard it a third time, this time clear as a bell. I went out into the warehouse, shouting, "Hello? Is somebody shouting at me? Hello?" There was nobody there at all. I checked down every aisle. I even walked through the office to see if one of the office staff had come in looking for me, but they all denied it and said nobody had been looking for me or had left the office. The thing that was the weirdest about the whole thing was a few days later, a different colleague of mine, who wasn't even there that day, told me when I'd come back up from the other unit that he'd heard somebody shouting my name while he was alone. Not his, but my name. The final and most scary thing that happened to me was when I saw a man out of my peripheral vision walking down the aisle next to me, parallel to me. As soon as I'd register somebody there, I looked across through the gaps in the racking, but there was nobody there. We see things out of the corner of our eyes all the time, but the thing is, I'd see him in detail. He was about 60 years old, with ashen hair, glasses, and was wearing white overalls. The uniform at our warehouse was a black polo shirt. I had a pretty good imagination, but I don't think I could have conjured up that vivid image in a split second. A few days later, I was down at our second unit, and a couple of subcontractors there putting up some more racking for us. I got talking to one of them, and he said to me that they were nearly done, and he was going to come in on Saturday morning to finish. But only he could make it, and didn't come in on his own without his colleague. I asked, "Is that a health and safety thing, or you just can't be here on your own?" He replied, "No, it's just whenever I'm here on my own, I see a bloke in white overalls walking down, and it just freaks me out." I felt a tingle run down my spine and legs, and he must have seen the look in my eyes, because as soon as he noticed my expression change, he asked me, "You've seen him, haven't you?" I still don't know what to make of it, but it creeps me out to no end. I must have been around 9 or 10 at the time, and I lived in a small village in the English countryside. It was just a normal Wednesday. I got back from school, played around for a bit, and ate dinner. It was then time for me to head down to take my taekwondo lessons that I used to go to. My dad got ready to take me, and I got in the car. We were driving down the normal road that took us to the bypass to the town where I took my lessons. I would take the same route every Wednesday evening. However, something strange and unexplainable happened this night as I was on my way. It got dark around 5 to 6 p.m. when I was traveling. The road was in between two relatively large dikes and surrounded by fields which are fairly common in the English countryside. As I was driving down the road, this lady sort of jumped out waving her hand as she was trying to gain somebody's attention that happened to be me and my dad. Me and my dad were fairly taken back from the situation and were pretty surprised. My dad slowed down and began to reverse the car back to where the lady was standing. My dad asked her what she was doing and if she was okay. She replied saying, "I crashed my car down the dike." My dad, being concerned, asked her if she needed help, which she replied saying, "Can you take me to my dad's house, which was located back towards the village?" When we stopped by the dike, I could see no visible car or any sort of sign that a car had gone down the dike. There would have been water in the dike and the lady was visibly wet. She got into the backseat of the car and my dad drove her to her dad's house, which was located about 5 minutes from where we were back towards the village. My dad and the lady carried out some small talk where she apologized for making me late for my lessons. We dropped the lady off and it appeared that she walked towards the house she claimed to be her dad's, and it looked to me as if she just morphed behind a metal gate. I couldn't properly see because of the darkness. We then proceeded to take me to my lessons. On the drive there, my dad was saying how weird the whole situation was, and we looked at the back seat behind where she was sitting. But what was strange was that there were no wet patches or anything to indicate somebody dripping wet had been there, even though I recall her being visibly wet. The next day, my dad went back to the dike where he saw no sign of a car and no sign of a car that had lost control down the side of the dike.